Moses, my servant, by Brother Harry Tennant. We continue reading chapter 2, Moses before Pharaoh. Moses followed the pattern of release in the quietness of his heart. The Lord spoke to him within. Pharaoh's wickedness would be turned to good account. The final deliverance would be such that Israel would never forget. She remembers even to this day, at Passover time in the land and in countries of the Gentiles, that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy son and of thy son's son what things I have wrought in Egypt. It is already almost Passover time. Passover time is barley and flax harvest in the lands of those parts, as witness the flax on the roof of Rahab's house, and the barley loaves at the same season in the days of Jesus. The plagues were gathering speed. Pharaoh was being overtaken in his pride. How long wilt thou refuse to humble thyself? Let my people go. There appears a crack in the defences of Egypt. Pharaoh is unmoved, but his servants, stinging with the memory of the hail, are unable to contain themselves when the next threat is one of locusts. They have heard the dread word tomorrow, and they seek speech with Pharaoh as Moses and Aaron go home. How long shall this man be a snare unto us? Pharaoh recalls the man and his brother. Is it not increasingly clear that Moses and Aaron move on angels' shoulders as they go through Egypt? Hated men, yet immune from any evil hand. None lifts the threat of violence against them. Pharaoh offers release for the men, but not for their children. For Moses it is all or nothing, and he with Aaron is driven from the presence of Pharaoh. But his hand is extended toward God in heaven, and a great wind blew that day and all that night, bringing upon its wings numberless insatiable locusts. Next day the face of the ground was dark with a devouring host. As effective as an army, they stripped the fields and gardens and de-leafed every tree. Pharaoh was frantic and sent in haste for Moses. It is not recorded that Moses said one word. The king seeks forgiveness and relief at the hand of the Lord's servant. Despite himself, Pharaoh has been driven to acknowledge that one Lord is God. He does not cry to a multitude of them, the god of the river, the frog, the lice, the flies, the murrain, the boils, the hail, the locusts. One God is Lord, and Moses is his servant. Indeed, Pharaoh has been brought to know that life and death are in the hands of the God of the Hebrews. As he looks upon the moving carpet of locusts and pleads with Moses, he says, Forgive, I pray thee, my sin only this once, and entreat the Lord your God that he may take away from me this death only. Moses went out and entreated the Lord. Moses the mediator, the intercessor, even for the unrighteous. Moses the man of effectual fervent prayer. The Lord heard him. He who had sent the east wind now sent the wind from the west. He is the Lord of the four winds of heaven. The locusts heeded their master. Soon they were airborne, bearing the spoils of Egypt, and there remained not one locust in all the coasts of Egypt. Pharaoh looked upon the devastation, and his heart turned within him. Israel must not go. Who is the Lord, indeed, that Pharaoh should bend to his will? Without further warning to Egypt, the Lord speaks to Moses. The one hand is stretched out once more toward the dwelling place of God. The response was frightening. Darkness fell over the land, thick darkness in which a man had to grope his way from place to place. Cattle and birds would falter, all sense of time would be disrupted. He who said, "Let there be light," had withdrawn his shining. Let there be night. But the Lord could see. The darkness and the light are both alike unto thee. And so could his people. For all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings, light from the Lord shining within their homes. It requires little interpretation. The world is dark, but there is shining in the homes of those who have the light of the world. As it was then when the Lord put redemption between his people and their enemies, so it is now when the word of the Lord is a lamp to our feet and a light to our path in a world of darkness. Moses was the man of day and night. His heart was in Goshen, but he was called to Pharaoh in the land of darkness. 3 days had passed in absolute blackness when Moses made his way into Pharaoh's presence. "Go, and your little ones," said the monarch. "And our cattle? There shall not an hoof be left behind," replied Moses, without the slightest concession to the man who had tried to battle with God. Moses will not yield and shows no repentance. Moses leaves him. "Thou hast spoken well. I will see thy face no more again." There is no record of the light returning to Egypt, but it seems almost certain that it did, deceptive in its pleasant shining, turning the heart of the land of the Nile from terror to a sense of security, while God prepared for the last stroke, when the afflicting bonds would be loosed and the people of God would be free. But Moses had not left the king's presence without the gravest of warnings. We do not know what impact this made on his hearers. There was a strangeness about Moses in the eyes of all the Egyptians, not least among the rulers and people of the court. Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. This was the direct fulfillment of the Lord's promise to Moses far away in the wilderness. "Certainly I will be with thee." And in the reluctant ears of the wilderness shepherd the Lord had added, "I will be with thy mouth." Later, when the work had begun, the Lord reminded Moses of his promise, saying, "See, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh." No doubt Moses was comforted within. There is assurance for all of us in the signs of God at work in the world around us, in the stirrings of Israel and the disunity of the nations. But the greater strength comes when a man becomes sure that God has been at work in his own life, in his own heart. Like another voice of old, we are led to exclaim, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not." Moses moved with humble yet majestic stride through the streets of the Egyptians and into the courts of the king, like an unwelcome but irresistible foreign monarch. As with Paul in later years, so this servant moved among a hostile people with the assurance that none would set upon him to hurt him. Think of the effect when he turns upon his heel in white-hot rage and leaves Pharaoh with these words sounding like a death knell upon his heart. "Thus saith the Lord, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill. and all the firstborn of cattle. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it any more. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue. Whether the heart of Pharaoh was too numb to receive the dread of these words, and whether his servants raised their voice in pleading to the king to seek the release of Israel, we shall never know. Howbeit the finger of the clock of God moved up toward midnight. Moses returned to Goshen. The Lord's people, safe yet afraid in Goshen, are to be drawn nearer to him by Moses and by sacrifice. The elders of the people, those who had accepted Moses when he first came back from Midian, came at the call of their leader and received the law of the Passover. There was no talk of war, no training for the battle, no building of ramparts or preparing of ambush. Instead, the Lord talked of a year-old lamb or kid, and of the families of Israel. In this defenceless yet blemish-free creature, each Israelite was to see himself, his family, and his nation. In later years, some would look back and see Christ, our Passover, sacrificed for us. The year-old sacrifice was chosen on the selected day. The eyes of the taskmasters of Egypt must have gazed on the sight with wonder and apprehension. Every family or group had chosen its living sacrifice and brought it home to be kept there until the moment of killing. If Egypt expected a sudden rising of rebel slaves, a bursting forth of the trapped sea of captive people, to break with fury upon the homes of the Egyptians, then this act of bringing home a little lamb or kid of the goats must have seemed a strange and harmless prelude. Strange, too, was the sight of men and women or children gathering the springing hyssop from the crevices and borders of the field. The evening of decision came. Twilight was the moment of slaughter, not of the Egyptians, but of the select sacrifice. Soon the hyssop bunches had set the blood upon the doorposts and lintels of the homes in which the whole animal was soon cooking with bitter herbs nearby. Yeast-free dough was warming in the kneading troughs. Everyone was dressed as though for a journey. The door was closed, and none went out, and none came in. Darkness outside was complete. Somewhere Moses was in a home performing the same ceremony. The same ceremony? Nothing that Moses did was ever the same as that of his brethren. They were being obedient to him. He was being obedient to his God. This was the moment when the whole burden of deliverance fell upon his shoulders. Either God would keep those seemingly incredible promises, or the whole hope of freedom would be shattered. What strength could there be in that lamb roasting in the evening hours, and in the now invisible marks of blood outside the house? None at all, unless God gave these things his meaning. While Israel thought on Moses and trusted him to greater or lesser degree, we read that, by faith he, that is Moses, instituted the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. This was the personal faith of Moses, rising above the people as high as words with faith tower above works alone. Moses bore the whole meaning and intent in his heart. He believed God as he sat by the Passover fire. The meal began in Goshen. Sweet, succulent meat and bitter herbs shared by a family or two. The voices of the children asking why they were up so late and dressed for a journey. the aged men eating slowly and but little, looking as Jews have done throughout the ages upon the gathered family, and pondering the question which every follower of Jesus has taken up in a new sense. What mean ye by this sacrifice? Outside all was quiet. The Egyptian watchers might have noticed that lights were burning in the homes, but no one was abroad. No visiting, no standing beneath the full moon, no lovers walking, only empty, footless streets. The stars looked down, witnesses to the promises to Abraham. So shall thy seed be. Here was the seed at home with the word of God, sealed within their dwellings by the life blood of the 1-year-old lamb. Moses waited. It was nearing midnight, and the meal was over. Aaron was ready. Silently the angels moved in, passing by every house which bore the mark of the covenant people, and entering with terrible accuracy the houses over all the land of Egypt, where the Passover had not been held. At midnight there was a cry made, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. Moses and Aaron waited. It was a certainty that they would be required. "Begone with your children and your flocks, and spare a blessing for me." Jacob had blessed Pharaoh when first he came to that land, and now the ruler seeks a further word before Jacob's children depart. Israel emerged from their homes bearing all their belongings. The cattle are herded. Without anger and with heartfelt implorings, the Egyptians beseech them to go. Go now! The women turn to their oppressors and ask for the bracelets, earrings, nose jewels, and everything of silver and gold. Nothing is refused, not even the raiment. For the Egyptians said, "We be all dead men. And what will a man give in exchange for his life?" Egypt had grown fat on the labour of God's people, and now they must make restoration. The Lord's firstborn move out under the full moon, while Egypt's are cold and still. The great migration had begun. 600,000 men with women, children, and flocks, under their elders at the direction of Moses and Aaron, set course under divine navigation. Like the birds of heaven in their annual flights, or the rivers going down to the sea, Israel were on course and in God's hand. From now on Moses would bear the great weight of this people. Their everyday needs would be his concern, lurking enemies a source of alarm, discipline and worship essentials to their development as a nation. If Egypt was glad when they left, as the psalm informs us, then we can be sure that Moses' joy was tempered with the care which had fallen upon his shoulders. For this, 40 years earlier, he had forsaken the silken cushions of the Egyptian court, and ever since had been a stranger and a sojourner. Truly he had an inner comfort, as the Lord spoke to him and he listened. He had a strange company. The Israelites untutored in the ways of the march, and with them a mixed multitude of fellow travellers, descendants, perhaps, of the first servants of Jacob and his family, but more likely some Egyptians and some other strangers in Egypt, who had learned that the God of the Hebrews, he is God. From the place of rest and waiting, the coffin of Joseph was taken up in fulfillment of the words, "God will surely visit you." Those bones travelled the whole of the wilderness journey and came to rest in the land of promise, awaiting the day of fulfillment for every sleeping saint. God will surely visit you. Thus, in fellowship with a sleeping saint, the seed of Abraham moved forward according to the promise of God, and under the leadership of a man trained by God for 80 years. Moses led the company, as he had led the sheep in the wilderness, forward toward Succoth, and seemingly on a course that would pass north of the Red Sea. They pitched camp at Etam at the command of Moses and of the cloud. For the cloud guiding them by day had already appeared, and they pitched at night under the pillar of fire. Moses was moving in faith. There is no indication that the Lord had revealed to him the path the nation would soon take. On the morrow the Lord spoke to his servant. There must have been some consternation in the minds of the Israelites when Moses led them back along the west side, the Egyptian side of the Red Sea. This was the moment of testing. Moses knew the immediate purpose of the Lord God. The spies from Egypt were already seeking their lost slaves. Perhaps they had seen them moving northward and reported that they would pass north of the Red Sea, perhaps making for the desert to the south of Palestine, but now the report was different. They were moving southwards, placing themselves between Egypt and the sea. Pharaoh, despite the great lessons of the plagues, hastened to gather his chariots and to move out in pursuit of the firstborn of God. 600 chariots were harnessed, and Pharaoh himself rode with them. 600,000, besides women and children, moved slowly to a point near the sea, where the mountains appeared on either side. The pillar of cloud led them on. What had happened to Moses and to his God? Surely this was mass suicide. There was no escape. Suddenly a cry of terror swept over the people, like the cry of the hunted beast when finally trapped by his pursuers. Moses would hear it as the noise of a mighty sea beating against the walls of his personal faith. The Egyptians had appeared, first like the faintest clouds of dust upon the evening horizon, and now like a broadening cloud hastening toward Israel. The frightened people must have receded like sheep before their enemies. The voice of the people, expressed no doubt through their leaders, broke upon Moses and Aaron in the first of many waves of murmuring. Because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Thanklessly they recalled their bondage and compare it favourably with the impending destruction. Their trust in Moses shrivelled like Jonah's gourd, with a worm of discontent at its root. Moses rose above them, imperturbable, and with the authority begotten of revelation. Fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord. And in confirmation of these becoming words, the great pillar of fire moved behind them in the gathering darkness, casting a radiant glow of comfort and assurance over Israel, and preserving a pitch blackness toward the Egyptians. This was not all. The Lord's voice urged Moses to move onward with the people. The lone hand which had stretched out over Egypt with such devastating results now reached forth over the sea. The wind arose, and a pathway, a highway for our God, appeared amid the fire-lit waters. Surely at least some of the Israelites must have wondered in their hearts, as men did later of the greater than Moses. What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?